Hi, my name's Thete and I'm going to be discussing Age of Sigmar again, but this time it's going to be the new Daughters of Khaine endless spells. Say endless spells, 2 endless spells and an Invocation of Khaine, because of course Daughters of Khaine have priests, or priestesses, more to the point. So a bit like with Blades of Khorne with the mortal stuff, you also get something that a priest can summon, which is actually the good one. So what we've got, I'm going to go through my thoughts on them. So the endless spells, first of all, the 2 endless spells, which are Bladewind and Bloodrack Viper. Now, they're both predatory endless spells. It was a little disappointing for me. Very much a double-edged sword. I'm not a huge fan of endless spells, and I'm really not a fan of predatory endless spells. Really, when it comes to it, the main problem with a predatory endless spell is it can bite you on the arse. It's all right, you can cast it and you summon it and you can, do some damage with it. And then in the very next turn, if you're going to go first, then your opponent will take control of it and they can send it back through your lines in particular circumstances. So if I go through Bladewind first of all, now, and then go through the different scenarios you could find yourself in. And what this one does is, this is a predatory endless spell. You can set it up within 9 inches of whoever's casting it, and you can then move it. What is it, 12 inches? Yeah, 12 inches. And what happens then? It says once the model is moved, each unit that had any models pass over it. So any units you pass over, plus any unit that is within 1 inch of it at the end of its movement, suffers D3 mortal wounds. In addition, you don't get cover modifier save rolls for attacks that target units that are within 12 inches of this model, which obviously again can hurt you as much as anyone else. Now, obviously I don't have those endless spells yet. In fact, it'll be a while before I do get them. But if I just show you an example of what we could do with this. Now, if I set up, for example, if I decide that Khaine is going to cast that. So, she can set it up within 9 inches of her. I mean, I could set it up, for example, here, and then I could move it 12 inches over here and try and place it within 1 inch of both the Black Coach and those. So the Bladegeist Revenants would take D3 mortal wounds. They would take D3 mortal wounds. That would take D3 mortal wounds. Okay, decent, reasonable situation there. Downside is if I decide actually, because of the way things have worked out and these Nighthaunt units have popped up at the back, I actually want to send it through some of these because they're going to crash into my lines. Downside there is setting it up 9 inches away from Morathi in this direction. Fine, can do that. And then send it 12 inches over here, no problem again. Still going to do D3 mortal wounds to 3 units. That's fine. I mean, that could do some serious damage to these. The problem then is in the next turn, if I go first, then they will just send it straight back at me. Okay. And that is the issue with it. And yes, of course, as the caster, you can set these things up. I mean, if I'd have, done that and I decided I'm going to send it through that, yeah, my opponent, depending on what happens in the rest of the turn, wouldn't necessarily be able to send it back my way to the point where it could do me some damage. But at the same time, the cover saving throw that gets removed would still be applied to you at various points during that turn. And it's just, I don't know, it just seems to me that predatory endless spells, because they can do a bit of damage, they tend to cost quite a few points. And it's just the injustice of thinking, right, I cast this, I've done some damage. Oh, but then my opponent's done some damage to me as well. And hopefully you stack the odds in your favour that they're not going to do more damage to you than you do to them. At the same time, you can't rule it out either. So I don't know, I always have a bit of an issue with predatory endless spells from that point of view. But that would be Bladewind. Bloodrack Viper, it just does damage. It will be more limited, the damage it can do. So for this one, you set it up within 9 inches, so that's the same as Bladewind. This time it can only move up to 9 inches. But again, in that scenario, I could still send it over there. But with this one, It says, after the model is moved, the player who moved the endless spell picks 1 unit within 1 inch of it. So it doesn't matter if it's not a case of going over things or anything like that. It just needs to finish within 1 inch of something. And then what you would do is for each roll, you roll 3 dice. For each roll that is equal to or greater than the wounds characteristic, 1 model from that unit is slain. So it doesn't do mortal wounds. So with the Nighthawk, they don't get their 6-up save against it. It's just going to kill them. But you could see in this particular scenario, you know, you would choose the Chain Rasp Horde. You'd be guaranteed of killing 3 of them. You would just kill 3 of them. So okay, from that point of view, you couldn't possibly do any damage to the Black Coach. Couldn't possibly do any damage to most characters. Although, you know, it would potentially have the option of one-shotting a hero, say with 5 wounds, roll 3 dice. If you get any 6s, it's dead. That'd be a little bit cheeky there. But again, it's one of those that in the next turn, make sure you haven't just set it up near, you know, make sure that you cannot have it come 9 inches back into you, and bearing in mind how the movement may have panned out since then. Because of course that could bite you on the arse as well. But of the 2, I think that's the one I would think, yeah, I might go for that. Depends on the points, it always depends on the points. I don't know what those are yet. But I look at that and I think maybe, because you could try a sneaky little shot against a hero character that's skulking behind another unit or something like that. You know, you give yourself close to a 50% chance of one-shotting. If it's on 5 wounds, if it's got 5 wounds, we've got 4 wounds. If it's a 4-wound hero, even better. But a lot of heroes are 5 wounds. You could do some damage there. Or even some, you know, 3-wound models. You might get a couple there. You've got a reasonable chance of getting a couple there. So that's, because remember, it's equal to or greater than their wounds characteristic. So actually, yeah, for the 5-wound hero, it's actually better than 50% chance. So that's, yeah, that's decent. That's okay. But still, predatory, I want that to not be very many points. There are some predatory endless spells, of course, that cannot hurt you. Like there's a Skaven Tide one. Doesn't affect Skaven units, so you can use that with impunity. That's fine. These ones, you just think, you know, you've not only got to cast them, you've got to have thought in advance about where you're going to place the caster that you intend to cast it with. You've just got to be very, very careful that it doesn't come back on you. But then the Invocation, now the Heart of Fury. Now this is reasonable because with Daughters of Khaine, the very glass cannons, so the murder machines, but they don't necessarily are not very good at taking a lot of damage back, which is why, and again, I don't know what the new rules are going to be in Daughters of Khaine, but assuming it's not a massively different to in the battle tome that's current for a few more days at any rate. You know, you can group them around a cauldron of blood for some extra protection, but this particular one, the Heart of Fury, you plonk. It's a priestess cast, so it's just, you know, your opponent can't do anything about it. If you get your 3 up, and again, if I tend to, with my general Hag Queen or Slaughter Queen, tend to say like they've got, well, Hag Queen, sorry, specifically. I tend to say that they are going to have the ability to re-roll failed invocations, so that helps as well. If you do, you place the model wholly within 12 inches of that Daughters of Khaine priest, and any Daughters of Khaine units wholly within 12 inches, that's going to be a difference with the battle tome straight away. There's a lot of, I think one of the things that made Daughters of Khaine quite powerful throughout 2nd edition is that a lot of their buffing abilities worked on units just being within rather than wholly within. So that meant your effective bubble was much larger, and you've got these big old blocks of, you know, priests, witch elves rather. Now you're going to have to cluster them much more closely. But any Daughters of Khaine units wholly within 12 inches of where you plonk this thing, the damage against it is reduced by 1, to a minimum of 1, of course. And that is always useful, much more useful than, for example, in 40k, because, you know, normally in 40k with a model, you go, oh, it's got 1 wound, so you can only do 1 damage to it anyway. Well, not so in Age of Sigmar. If something does 2 damage, it kills 2 1-wound models. That's all there is to it. So that is always useful, always useful. So that as well, points dependent, could be interesting. The only drawback to that is, of course, Daughters of Khaine very, very mobile. They're not a stand around here, shoot at you type thing. So, you know, there is the danger of moving out of its protection range. So you've got to place it where you've got to sort of think about where you're going to get to. But that's okay as well. And at the end of the turn, you know, like the ones for the Blades of Khorne, you roll a die and it might just disappear or it might remain. Because, of course, you know, your opponent can't do anything about it. It's not an endless spell. So, and that's quite... And again, in terms of keeping it up as well, because it says at the end of each battle round, if this model is on the battlefield, the player who set up this model must roll a die, add 1 to the roll if there are any avatars of Khaine within 6 inches, and on a 1 to 3, the model is removed from the battlefield. So if it's near your avatar of Khaine on your Cauldron of Blood, then basically you'll get to keep it on a 3 to 6. It's only a 1 or a 2 it would disappear. So that could be quite useful as well. Apart from the fact sometimes you might want it to disappear if you need to relocate it for the next battle round. But, you know, if you place it near where there's going to be a tough combat, you wouldn't necessarily anticipate your unit beating that unit up and moving on in the next battle round anyway. So that one I do quite like. Again, points dependent. So those are my thoughts on the Daughters of Khaine Endless Spells. Let me know yours in the comments below. Hope you found the video interesting. If you did, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And until next time, I'll see you later.